Good evening. If I could call this meeting to order. If we could please start with a moment of silence for prayer or reflection. Thank you.
So we have a two-part meeting this evening. Our first part is going to be our organizational meeting that we must have every single year. The first item of business on that is appointments of City Council members to our various standing and special committees, external boards, and quasi-judicial tribunals. This is for the term of October 15th, 2018 to October 31st, 2019. Bear with me, you'll have to listen to me for about 10 minutes. I'll try and be as quick as I can. Okay, appointments to committees reporting directly to Council. Administrative and Legislative Review Committee, Councillor Hirsch, Chair, Councillor Friesen, Vice Chair, Councillor Dumanowski. Audit Committee, Councillor Hirsch, Chair, Councillor Turnbull, Vice Chair, and Councillor McIntosh. Corporate Services Committee, Councillor Dumanowski, Chair, Councillor Hirsch, Vice Chair, and Councillor Varga. Development and Infrastructure Committee, Councillor Dumanowski, Chair, Councillor Turner, Vice Chair, and Councillor McIntosh. Energy and Utilities Committee, Councillor Councillor Turnbull, Chair, Councillor McIntosh, Vice Chair, and Councillor Turner. Heritage Resources Committee, Councillor McIntosh. Public Services Committee, Councillor Friesen, Chair, Councillor Turner, Vice Chair, and Councillor Samraj. Special Appointments, Canadian Badlands, Councillor Varga. Civic Functions, Councillor Samraj. Community Futures Entrecourt, Brian Mustell, Commissioner of Corporate Services. Cypress View Foundation, Councillor Friesen. Highway 3 Twinning Association, Councillor Turner. Medicine Hat Community Housing, Councillor Samraj. Palliser Economic Partnership, Councillor Turner. Regional Drainage Committee, Councillor Samraj. City representation on other boards, committees and commissions. Canadian Badlands, Councillor Turnbull, Councillor Varga, and Sandra Blythe, who's our Business Support Officer. Chamber of Commerce, Councillor Turner. City Centre Development Agency, Councillor Samraj. Cypress View Foundation, Councillor Friesen and Councillor Turner. Friends of Madalta, Councillor McIntosh. Medicine Hat Community Housing Society, Councillor Samraj. Medicine Hat Exhibition and Stampede, Councillor Turner. Medicine Hat Public Library, Councillor Turnbull. Municipal Names Committee, Councillor McIntosh. Municipal Planning Commission, Councillor Varga, Chair, and Councillor Hirsch. Palliser Economic Partnership, Councillor Turner. Sandra Blythe, Business Support Officer. Police Commission, Councillor Friesen and Councillor Dumanowski. Shortgrass Library System, Councillor Turnbull. Subdivision and Development Appeal Board, Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Turner. Tourism Medicine Hat Committee, Councillor Varga. So, need a motion to...
So moved.
Any questions or comments? I think there was only one error. I think that Councillor Turner wasn't mentioned for Cypress View Foundation. Okay. Cypress View Foundation? I only heard Councillor Friesen.
Yes, that's all we have on here for Cypress View. So there should be two. Oh, okay, Councillor Turner, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Just make that slight amendment to what was read into the record. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, if we could vote. That was unanimous, thank you.
And our second point of business is 2019 committee and council meeting calendar for adoption.
If I get a motion.
So moved.
Second. Any questions or comments? All right, if we could vote. That was unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, so adoption of the agenda for our regular meeting tonight. I do have a note to remove item 5.2, which was the Police Commission minutes from September 20th. Council will have a sense of deja vu because that did come to last meeting, so we'll withdraw that. Thank you.
Any other additions? Deletions? All right, seeing none, we'll adopt the agenda.
Adoption of the minutes, item 3.1, page 3. You'll find minutes from our last meeting on October 1st.
Any questions, comments, or errors or omissions? Okay, seeing none.
Moving along now to reports, item 4.1 on page 8. You'll find the Development and Infrastructure Committee meeting of October 3rd. This report's for information.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any comments? All right, seeing none, it's a good vote. That was unanimous, thank you.
Next report's item 4.2 on page 15. You'll find the Energy and Utilities Committee meeting of October 4th. Again, this report's for information.
I'll move that report for information.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All right, if we could vote. That was unanimous, thank you.
Our next report's item 4.3 on page 31. You'll find the Audit Committee meeting minutes of October the 9th. This report's also for information.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Councillor Hirsch?
Well, Your Worship, you know, bit of a bittersweet tri-annual review, if you will. Good story to present in the fact that it's a projection for our utilities to have a $50 million surplus by the end of the year, which is certainly a good news story. However, hampered a little bit by a projected $33 million loss in our NGPR. And I think, you know, one thing I just want to stress in the fact that, you know, in isolation, it absolutely is a great story in terms of that, but I think it's prudent upon us to look at it from the whole, and the fact that I really appreciate the graph that was displayed in terms of looking at it from a net point of view, and the fact that we are in a positive variance moving forward, projection of $17.2 million by the end of fiscal year end. So, you know, and I think, again, we need to look at it from a net point of view as opposed to the individual. It's certainly room to celebrate in each individual business units that had a stellar year, so congratulations to those. And for those that are looking to, on some challenging fronts in terms of our NGPR, we're pretty confident in terms of our strategy, and we'll look at that going forward. But again, I think it's important for people to understand that the funds that we do receive, we look at it from the net, that the money that does come forward, and maybe we need to look in terms of our dividend strategy, again, to see if this is the application that is fairest for what our business needs are going to be for the future. So having money to go into the Heritage Fund when we clearly have displayed of need for capital in other areas is something that we might have to have a discussion on a go-forward basis. So thank you.
Thank you, good comments. Councillor Turnbull?
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Hirsch. It wasn't that long ago, just 3 years ago, that we actually lost almost $5 million in GENCO, and we, of course, have been continuing to lose a lot of money in gas because the price of natural gas, as we all know, without proper pipelines to go to Tidewater, the price is depressed and will be for some time. So I think it's really important that we are cautious, that Council is very cautious in how we approach, because the price of commodities can change very drastically, plus the fact that the present provincial government is going to change in the next 3 years the electrical distribution and cost analysis to a different program that may harm us. We don't know that for sure, but I think it's always good to be cautious and not say, oh, well, we're going to make this $50 million for the next 10 years. I hope we can. I hope we'll even do better than that, but I think we got into problems here because we didn't recognize that commodity prices have a way of peaking and at the highs and peaking down to the very lows. So I agree with Councillor Hirsch. For me, I think that report that says the net is $17.2 million. Remember, we made $50 million And not just Janko, but that includes our environmental utilities as well, and our distribution network, both electrical and gas. But we lost $33 million in operating gas, and it doesn't look going forward that it's going to get any better. So we are bleeding a lot of cash there, even though we're gaining cash on the electrical side. So that's my comments. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Dumanowski?
Your Worship, I'm just going to weigh in. I think the comments have been well stating the situation. My only addition might be that we have to look at these units as a whole, and I think that's already been said. It's not atypical for this community to experience in our utility. In some years when gas is low, we lose money, and in many cases we make money in our generation. In the past, it may have been reverse. It's no different than on your own home utility, if I can use an analogous situation where in the summer months your water is a lot higher, but your gas is considerably lower. I appreciate these are serious numbers and they bear consideration for the present and the future. But I do draw that analogous situation to help the public understand that this isn't necessarily an unusual pattern that we've experienced. In some cases, it is unusual to make $50 million when we didn't anticipate that, but we also lost more in NGPR when we clearly didn't see that necessarily coming. So we are going to see highs and lows, and we're going to typically see one utility offset the other. But the good news in this story, of course, is the net derivative of 17.2, which is projected. So we can take some solace in that, but we'll continue to look at our patterns and look at our utility departments and see what else we can do.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, if we could vote. And that was unanimous. Thank you.
Our next item of business is item 4.4 on page 64. You'll find the Public Services Committee meeting minutes of October the 9th, and this report's for adoption.
I will move the report for adoption.
I'll second that.
I don't know if we want to deal with these two issues separately, if there's going to be any amendments or any...
If I could, Your Worship, and I should have said it when I made the motion, can we separate these two items out?
So if we could deal with them as they appear in order. So item number 1 first.
So that would be the URAB Special Events Competition and Assistance Grants.
Yeah. Any questions or comments on item number 1? Okay.
As always, I always, through the chair to Councillor Friesen, I always question this all the time, and it was good that I attended your meeting that day to hear it from the way they do their scrutinizing and how they figure out who gets the money and who doesn't and who's worthy of it and who's not. To me, everybody's worthy of getting a little bit when they're representing Medicine Hat as a whole to go to special events or to hold special events. So it's nice to see some of the money going again to worthy causes and to worthy groups and worthy people that are going to show off their talents towards showing off Medicine Hat and where they're from. So it's good to see, and I always love when people get a little bit of a bonus to go and compete for the city as a whole and maybe come back with a world championship. The couple of them are at World Fencing Championships. One's a World Karate Championship, and one's a Provincial Fencing Championship, so where they're hosting. So it's great to see that we've got these athletes that are competing, and they put their Medicine Hat name behind it. So we wish them well, and I'm glad to see that we gave them some money to move forward and compete at these competitions.
Thank you, Councillor Samraj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on Councillor Varga's comments, maybe we should, for the people that are in the gallery that don't have the briefing notes here, just highlight who these people are. And so the AAA Fencing Club in town is hosting the Provincial Fencing Championships, and the city is providing them $2,000 to help them put on their event. Cade Kleinknecht is going to the World Karate Championships, and we're supporting him with $1,000. And Corinne and James Sheardown, they're going to a Veterans World Championships as well abroad, and they're getting $1,000 each. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most fun parts of the job is to support Medicine Hatters, either going or presenting or representing them in championships here.
Just a small correction, they're receiving $500 each.
I was going to say that, yeah.
That's okay.
Just so they don't think they're getting
Any other questions or comments? So if we could vote on item 1 only for adoption. And that was unanimous, thank you.
Item 2 is elements of a new cannabis bylaw.
Councillor Friesen?
Your Worship, I would like to outline a little bit of the conversation committee had, and I'm sure others will augment that. You will recall that at our last meeting, Public Services was tasked with looking at the elements of what a cannabis-specific bylaw would be. And so what you see before you tonight are the elements, not all the exact detail, but the elements that we are proposing, recommending to you for adoption, that would be included in a new cannabis bylaw. It is not the same as Calgary's, but it is a similar kind of approach. So what you have before you are, in terms of the elements or the principles, if you want to call them that, would be the prohibiting of smoking and vaping of cannabis in public places. So no smoking in public places. There would be a provision or an exception, if you will, for people using cannabis for medical reasons. There would be a mechanism to grant event permits allowing smoking and vaping in a public place where it's not otherwise prohibited by federal or provincial legislation. As an example, and I don't want to pick on Spectrum, but I will, because just as an example, they could apply to the city for a permit for a one-time event where they could have a place for smoking and vaping, as long as it fell within the other orders of government's legislation. And the third component or principle would be allowing council to designate by resolution a public place or places where cannabis might be smoked or vaped, where it's not otherwise prohibited by federal or provincial legislation again. So you could make application to council to have a place where it could be consumed. So those are the principles by which we are recommending to you that a new cannabis bylaw be developed. I just want to add that municipalities across the province have taken various approaches to bylaws, and they are not all consistent with each other. There is a tobacco, alcohol, and cannabis legislation from the province is very broad and very big, so the majority of municipalities are augmenting that with their own municipal bylaws. There's one who is not. They're going to use the provincial one. So that's what we're proposing. It's based on what we heard from you. And I guess I'd like to see you adopt that so legal can go ahead and refine it more and have it prepared and ready.
Thank you. Councillor Samraj?
Thank you, Mayor Clugston. The sticking point of the new approach that council is taking is going to be exactly what exemptions that we are going to approve, and I think each of those exemptions is going to be a subject of much debate when this comes back before council. Some of the things that Councillor Friesen has outlined, I think, are going to be fairly uncontroversial, such as medical exemptions and permits for outdoor events like a beer garden. I think some of the other ones that will be more contentious are smoking, whether smoking cannabis at campsites is going to be permitted. I personally support that. I think that's a reasonable accommodation there. The other thing is while the bylaw will allow council to designate a public place to consume cannabis, it won't actually name it, so we will have to think about what place people can consume cannabis. Now the argument about, well, why not just leave it to private residences? That doesn't work because not everybody is able to consume cannabis in their buildings. So for me, that defeats the whole point of legalization. If you're going to legalize something, but while leave some people no place to consume it because they don't have bars like alcohol users do. So I think the idea that has the most potential to work is designating potentially environmental reserve areas throughout the city as a place where you can consume cannabis. But that's going to be something that we're going to talk about. But while we're going through this and trying to find a place where it can be consumed, you can see the challenge in finding a place that's going to cause the minimal amount of nuisance for non-smokers. And you can see why some cities have chosen sidewalks, because they are so widely available public property throughout a city. But it's going to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah. Well said. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Varga?
Through the chair to Councillor Friesen, you said at the end of your report that there might be some changes that go into this with staff, or is this actually what we're going to see? You said there might be some tweaks to this bylaw. I just want to get some clarity on that as to how that might work.
Yeah, if I could, Your Worship. I think what you see are principles here that are fairly large and broad in nature. So once the bylaw is drafted, and of course it'll come back to us, it will have to contain a few more specifics. And so, no, the intent is clearly here, but there might be some detail that's missing. And Councillor Samraj pointed out a very good one. You know, if the public can come for a resolution from council about a place, or if we just do it ahead of time, that's the kind of detail we'll have to decide on. So it is true. These are principles. Now they'll have to be developed with a little more detail to the application of the principles. I don't know if that helps you or not.
It did, and I believe mine were the same, were the events, how it's going to be dealt with, and where they're going to be held at. And the other one, of course, was the designated cannabis areas, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I don't think we're ever going to have an area that's perfect for the people of our community, right, to go do this. So we're going to have some struggles, but I see there's a public hearing that's going to be held, and then we're going to have to make the decision whether it's going to be viable or not, right? So there is going to be some contentious days in council when that does come forward as to where these areas are going to be. And to a lot of people in our community, there is no right area to have that happen in our community. So there'll be some debates and some battles here in council, I believe, before we designate an area to that. So just my comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Samraj?
Thank you, Mayor Tluxton. I just wanted to talk about what's going to happen on the 17th. Because our bylaw won't be in place, you're going to be allowed to smoke weed on sidewalks, and generally the same restrictions that apply to tobacco will apply to cannabis. I think there's a lot of excitement and apprehension around Wednesday, and I guess I would ask for the people that are happy that cannabis is illegal, please be mindful that the vast majority of people in the city have real concerns about secondhand smoke, and I think if you were just considerate of them as well, it would do much to ease this transition, and be happy that it's legal.
Yeah. Thank you. City Solicitor.
Through the chair, just as a follow-up to Councillor Varga's question, just to be clear, these are the principles coming forward. We still have to draft the bylaw. It may look somewhat similar to the Calgary bylaw since it was going to contain similar principles. However, you know, we'll have to establish a process for permit issuing, a process for approving public places where it's allowed or the bylaw doesn't apply. So those won't be contained in the bylaw, but the process for doing that. So those may come forward at a later date to ask for a permit or to ask for a public place to be exempt from the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, if we could vote. That was unanimous. Thank you.
Moving along now to item 4.5 on page 75, Administrative Committee meeting of October 11th. This report's for adoption with the 2019-2022 fleet budget.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions? Councillor Turnbull?
Thank you, Worship. Well, this report is a success story. We sometimes think that our city and our councillors are not aware of the expense to operate our city. So I'll go back to when Councillor Dubanowski and I were on the audit committee back in 2010, and we sent our first value for money audit out on fleet. And fleet at that time had somewhere around 1,000 vehicles. Today, we have 690. So we've made great progress. The city has made great progress in reducing the size of our fleet. Doesn't mean that we can't continue to work at that process. I know that management at Fleet, I have all the confidence in the world in them because they understand that we are in a financially fit mode and that we must provide the best service we can, and that being the number of vehicles we have for what money we have. So, but this is a truly great success story, and I'm really happy to the fact that we've dropped almost 300 vehicles over the course of about 8 years. So we are on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Friesen?
Thank you, and well said, Councillor Turnbull. I agree. There's been a lot of work done in Fleet, and I'm pretty proud of the achievement. I just wanted to say this is a little bit of an anomaly in how we do things because we adopt the whole fleet budget, providing we do tonight, and then sometimes when vehicles come up in department budgets, then we decide we want to debate those vehicles and so on. So I just wanted to remind everybody that if we pass this tonight, then that whatever vehicle that is already passed. We've had it happen in the past where it really created some confusion in council. So if we pass the fleet budget, the vehicles are also adopted.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, if we could vote. And that was unanimous. Thank you.
Moving on now to reports for reception, item 5.1 on page 80. You'll find the Municipal Planning Commission meeting minutes of August 22nd.
I move this report for reception.
Second.
Comments? Okay, if we could vote. And that was unanimous. Thank you. Item 5.2 has been pulled, so seeing no more business before this council, we are adjourned.